Coming up on 5 Minute News. WHO calls for pause on booster shots to vaccinate poorer nations. US plans to require COVID-19 shots for foreign travellers. And this year's summer of climate extremes hits wealthier places. It's Thursday, August 5. I'm Anthony Davis. The head of the World Health Organization has called for a moratorium on administering booster shots of COVID-19 vaccines as a way to help ensure that doses are available in countries where few people have received their first shots. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus made the appeal mostly to wealthier countries that have so far outpaced the developing world in numbers of vaccinations. He said richer countries have administered about 100 doses of coronavirus vaccine for every 100 people on average, while low-income countries, hampered by short supplies, have provided only about 1.5 doses per 100 people. WHO officials say the science is unproven about whether giving booster shots to people who've already received 2 vaccine doses is effective in preventing the spread of the coronavirus. The UN Health Agency has repeatedly called for rich countries to do more to help improve access to vaccines in the developing world. It has argued that no one is safe until everyone is safe, because the longer and more widely the coronavirus circulates, the greater the chance that new variants could emerge and prolong a global crisis in fighting the pandemic. The agency has no power to require countries to act, and many in the past have ignored its appeals on issues like donating vaccines, limiting cross-border travel, and taking steps to boost production of vaccines in developing countries. Tedros pointed to a WHO target he'd announced in May, seeking to ensure that 10% of the populations in all countries receive vaccines against coronavirus. Israel, France, Germany, and many Middle Eastern countries have already started administering boosters, and other nations, including the United States and Britain, are considering plans to do so in the wake of the emergence of the highly transmissible Delta variant. The Biden administration is taking the first steps towards requiring nearly all foreign visitors to the US to be vaccinated for the coronavirus, a White House official said on Wednesday. The requirement would come as part of the administration's phased approach to easing travel restrictions for foreign citizens to the country. No timeline has yet been determined, as interagency working groups study how and when to safely move toward resuming normal travel. Eventually, all foreign citizens entering the country, with some limited exceptions, are expected to need to be vaccinated against COVID-19 to enter the US. The Biden administration has kept in place travel restrictions that have severely curtailed international trips to the US, citing the spread of the Delta variant. Under the rules, non-US residents who have been to China, the European Schengen area, the United Kingdom, Ireland, Brazil, South Africa, and India in the prior 14 days are prohibited from entering the United States. All travelers to the US, regardless of vaccination status, are required to show proof of a negative COVID-19 test taken within 3 days of air travel to the country. The Biden administration has faced pressure to lift some restrictions from affected allies, the air travel industry, and families who've been kept separated from loved ones by the rules. Many have complained that the travel restrictions don't reflect the current virus situation, particularly as caseloads in the US are worse than in many of the prohibited nations. As the world staggers through another summer of extreme weather, experts are noticing something different. 2021's onslaught is hitting harder and in places that have been spared global warming's wrath in the past. Wealthy countries such as the United States, Canada, Germany, and Belgium are joining poorer and more vulnerable nations on a growing list of extreme weather events that scientists say have some connection to human-caused climate change. Killer floods hit China, but hundreds of people also drowned in parts of Germany and Belgium not used to being inundated. Canada and the Pacific Northwest of the US had what climate scientist Zeke Hausfather called scary heat that soared well past triple digits in Fahrenheit and into the high 40s in Celsius, shattering records and accompanied by unusual wildfires. Now, southern Europe is seeing unprecedented heat and fire. For fire season, the US West is the driest it's been since 1580, based on soil moisture readings and tree ring records, setting the stage for worsening fires if something ignites them. What happens with US hurricane and fire seasons drives the end-of-year statistics for total damage costs of weather disasters. But when poorer nations are hit, they are less prepared, and their people can't use air conditioning or leave, so there's more harm, said Hausfather, climate director of the Breakthrough Institute. While hundreds of people died in the Pacific Northwest heatwave, he said the number would have been much higher in poor areas. Madagascar, an island nation off East Africa, is in the middle of back-to-back droughts that the United Nations warns are pushing 400,000 people towards starvation. You can subscribe to 5-Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5-Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5-Minute News is an Evergreen Podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.